I feel like such a rock star with this microphone. I just want to like, don't stop me now. You bust out some Freddie Mercury. Hi. So despite it being the temperature of a kindergartner, God, we don't do this in Georgia. Like, I'm from Georgia. I'm born and raised. And the last time I saw single-digit temperature was never. So like, and when I woke up this morning and I saw that it was -5, I was like, what am I doing here? But I will say that I have felt nothing but welcome. And that is awesome, because that's our theme, right? Like, all are welcome. It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you all, to be talking about the idea of being and feeling welcomed. And I say that because I started writing books largely because I didn't feel welcomed. I was talking at the high school this morning about 8th through 12th grade and how, as a little kid, I was a reader and I was a liar. And those are kind of the two things that make a solid storyteller. Is, you know, you got to be able to like tell really fantastic lies. And you also need to know how to put together a sentence. But then when I hit 8th grade, and I think really the book that ruined reading for me was George Orwell's Animal Farm. Something about like dictator pigs just like wasn't getting it for me. But after that, going into 9th grade, 9th through 12th grade, I read 3 books in 5 years of school that had an African-American character. 5th grade, I tested into what in Georgia is known as the gifted program. Do you guys have like a gifted program here? And I instantly became this token creature. I was typically the only African-American student in my classes. And when you go from 8th grade to 12th grade, and you only see 3 representations of yourself, even like distantly in books, it makes books not really that great to read. So the 3 characters I encountered, one, and I had so much fun doing this at the high school because everybody knew which books they were. So the first one involved an escaped slave headed upriver with a little white boy. Who's that? Huck Finn, Jim from The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. The second character was a man falsely accused of a really terrible crime, who then suffers a terrible fate. Tom Robinson, To Kill a Mockingbird. And the third was a man who kind of had a hunchback and was like really sweet. He had big dreams, but he couldn't do anything about them. That was Crooks from Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. And that was it, y'all. Like, those are the only 3 characters I ever encountered who had brown skin. And the books that I was told were the ones you had to read to prove that you were a person who was literate. So I didn't really feel welcomed. I didn't feel welcome in my classrooms. I didn't feel welcomed in literature, besides Harry Potter. You know, my Patronus tattoo. Harry Potter, this is very new. Like, I got this like 3 weeks ago. And Harry Potter those books were the only books I read in high school where I actually liked them, and like I was like engaged and I wanted to read them. But like I said, throughout high school, I just wasn't anywhere. And I think that does something to a kid, you know? When you are a person in a classroom and somebody says, well, this is the list of books that you have to read to prove that you are a person who can read and who has comprehension skills and who is intelligent, and you don't see yourself in anything that you read, it messes with your head a little bit. So much so that my dreams of writing, they just kind of died. I have a friend named Alex. In my second book, there's a character named Ray. Ray's mother is Irish. Her father's Chinese American. Ray is based on Alex. Alex tells me that in 8th grade, I told her I was going to be a New York Times bestseller one day. At some point, that dream kind of crumbled to dust. And that had to do with the lack of representation and of feeling welcomed in the spaces I constantly found myself. So what changed? Well, I read a book called Divergent. Who's heard of this? So the Divergent series, there's Divergent, Insurgent, and Allegiant. This was kind of one of the first steps to me becoming a writer, was reading this book. The Divergent series was the first series I ever read where the black character lives all the way through the end. And it was like, whoa, this actually happens. Black people survive apocalypses in books. And that was something that was super eye-opening for me. And I'm like, okay, if Christina can survive this crazy apocalypse, maybe I can actually write a book. So that was one thing. Another thing that happened is I went to Israel for the first time. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with the Israel-Palestine conflict it's been going on since the country was founded in 1948, so I hope we're familiar with that. The first time I went there, though, I went there as this intensely evangelically Christian girl who just wanted to visit the land of the Bible. On my itinerary, I had a visit to Bethlehem. And I'm going into Bethlehem thinking, okay, cool, so I'm gonna go up in here, I'm gonna see where Jesus was born, and there's gonna be donkeys, and there's gonna be a manger, and it's probably gonna smell really bad. And you go into what is called the Church of the Nativity. And basically what happens is you get shuttled down some stairs into this basement, and there's a hole in a rock that's plexiglassed off and enshrined. And apparently that's where the Lord Jesus was laid after his birth. And to say that it was a little disappointing would be a bit of a euphemism. So I didn't find Jesus in Bethlehem, but what I did find is a family who had a daughter my age. Her name was Grace. Grace, her family has been in Bethlehem. Now, Bethlehem is in the West Bank. The West Bank is an area technically of Israel, but not exactly, because it hasn't been totally annexed. So it's not technically a part of the country, and it's not technically governed. It's real funky, guys. They'll just leave it at that. But basically, her family has been in this area for 3 or 4 generations, and her only ambition, her one goal, was to go to university in England. And I was like, well, what's up? Go to university in England, you can do it. And that's when I found out that because they have no country of nationality as residents of this particular part of the West Bank, she couldn't get a passport. So it was like encountering this other person who not only felt unwelcomed in the country where her family has been for generations, but is also stuck there. Because of course, if you don't have a passport, you can't cross an international border. If you don't have a country of nationality, you don't really have rights the way that we understand rights. So it really highlighted things that I took for granted, but it also was something that I was really able to connect with. And I wasn't expecting to be able to connect with her because I don't know, I have a country of nationality, and I clearly had a passport because I was in Israel. But there was something about her story that really made me want to write. The third thing that led to me jumping in with both feet. In 2012, I had a baby. Those of you ladies in the audience who have children, we all know how harrowing an experience it can be growing a human being inside your body for 10 months straight, on average. And then you got to get the thing out. And it's man, there's no way to get it out that isn't painful. So once you have this person that you have grown and gotten out into the world, however you did such a thing, you want that person to stay alive. So when my older son, it's dang, I did all this work, let's get something out of it. My older son, when he was 5 months old, I heard about an incident in Jacksonville, Florida. At this point, I'm living in Israel because while I may not have found Jesus while I was there that first time. I did find a really hot guy, and we got married. We've been married for 9 years now, and our first child was born in Israel. But I heard about this incident in Jacksonville, Florida. So my son was born in June. This was November 2012. And this incident involved a group of African-American teenage boys who went to a convenience store one night, I guess to like get Doritos. Like, what do you go to a convenience store at 17, you're probably like grabbing slushies. It's not like you can buy anything else. So my guess is they were like grabbing some snacks or something. They had their music turned up real loud though. And a man pulls into the parking lot next to where they're parked. He was unhappy with both the type of music they were listening to and the volume at which they were listening to this music. And he starts an argument with these kids, and within 3.5 minutes, this man had pulled out his gun and started shooting. There's a young man named Jordan Davis who was killed in this altercation. And it hit me really hard, largely because I had just shoved this person out of my body, and this person will eventually grow up and will look like this young man who lost his life, you know? Like, clearly my children are black. It's not a surprise. So knowing that my boys will eventually be tall, my dad's like 6'6", you know, they're not gonna be small people. Knowing that they will come to a point when, you know, people look at them and they see threats. They see a threat, they see somebody suspicious before they see a kid. I know that's gonna happen. So knowing that there will come a point when my children don't feel welcomed in convenience stores, in department stores. I am 33 years old and I still get followed around stores. I've been followed around bookstores, y'all. With my book on the shelf. It's the craziest thing. I'm in a I kid you not, I was in a Barnes & Noble in Atlanta. This is like March of last year, right? So I'm in this Barnes & Noble with my best friend. She is also African American and female. And we are sitting in the photography section. You guys got Barnes & Noble here, right? Oh yeah. You know where the photography section is in there? Most of you don't. Because you gotta go through like Pan's Labyrinth to find it. So we're sitting in the photography section, which is in a part of the store that you would have to look for to find. She's reading a photography book, and I am arranging the 7 books I had pulled from the shelf on the floor so that I could do an Instagram story. #priorities. And the manager comes around the corner. She's a Caucasian lady, and she looks at us. She kind of lifted her chin and looks down, and she says, "I'm going to have to ask you to move. You can't sit here, you're blocking the aisle." I looked to my left and right because there really wasn't an aisle, but okay. So we gathered our things, and honestly, this is the thing that I would honestly wouldn't have thought anything of it if not for the fact that the lady stood over us while we gathered our stuff, and then she followed us through the store until we checked out. And like the petty Patty in me really wanted to strut over to the must-reads table where my own book was right there front and center with New York Times bestseller across the top. But I didn't do that. Looking back, I totally would do it if it happens again. That's definitely what I'm gonna do. But I know that if I'm having those experiences at 33, there's no doubt in my mind my kids are gonna have them at some point. So that's really where Dear Martin came from. Dear Martin came from, finally coming to grips with the fact that I wasn't imagining things when I found myself feeling unwelcome in certain spaces. Coming to realize that in the 12th grade, when I was having a discussion about test scores with a girl in my class, I had gotten, my ACT composite score was 2 points higher than hers. And she looked at me and she said, "There's no way you got a higher score than me." I wasn't imagining things. The fact that that made me uncomfortable wasn't me being too sensitive. There really was something to that. Having those experiences throughout life, that's what really made me want to be a writer. because I know that there are going to be kids who have these experiences too. And if you can't or don't feel welcome in the place where you have to exist, it's really awesome to be able to feel welcome in a book. So my goal now is to create the books that I wish I'd had when I was younger. Dear Martin is a book that follows a 17-year-old African-American boy who has a really nasty experience with racial profiling, and as a result decides he's going to start a journal of letters that he writes to the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to see if Dr. King's teachings hold up now in the 21st century. Like I said, that really came from the Jordan Davis incident in Jacksonville, and coming to understand that like racism is still a thing. My second book is called Odd One Out. That one follows 3 high schoolers who are trying to navigate kind of the intersections of friendship and romance and figure out who it's okay to love. That one came from, some of my experiences with questioning, I should say, and trying to figure myself out and my attractions out, because there are a lot of kids in your schools who are asking questions about themselves and who are trying to figure out, like, I'm feeling these things. High school is an age, middle and high school really are those ages when things start waking up inside. And those questions are very real. And if you can't find the support around you, how great is it to find it in a book? My third book comes out this October. That one's called Jackpot. That one is about kind of the poor girl in the rich area who works at a gas station. There's a night she sells a lottery ticket worth $106 million. And when the winner fails to come forward, she decides she's going to go seek her out and try to find her. And for assistance, she taps the only other person in the store the night she sold the ticket, who happens to be the richest boy in school. So that book is really about economic inequality and how money affects a teenager's quality of life. It's about what happens when a have and a have not have to work together to accomplish a mission. And I was that kid who was kind of the poor girl in the area where, my cheerleading teammate got an Audi for her 16th birthday. So I know that experience as well. My fourth book will come out in January. That one's for middle schoolers. You guys don't care about that one. You should though, it's actually really cute. But anyway, every book that I write is about making people feel welcomed, especially people who don't typically get to see themselves in books. So I hope that you guys read them and enjoy them. I thank you for welcoming me. And who has questions? Because I've been talking at you for long enough. So what do you guys want to know from me? It could be anything. It could be about books. It could be about writing. It can be about life. My favorite color is orange. Yes, sir.
I'm trying to remember. Is your father a policeman or what?
My father, absolutely. The first 24 years of my life, my father was a police officer. And that made writing Dear Martin very interesting. So the Jordan Davis incident is really what sparked the desire to write Dear Martin. Knowing that a black boy could lose his life over loud music coming out of a car. That was like, what? In 2014, Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson, Missouri. And that was my first time really encountering a situation that involved a police officer and the death of somebody who was unarmed. Growing up, police officers were like everything to me, right? I saw one every day. I remember being like 6 or 7 and constantly arresting my little brother. Like it was a thing that like, you stole my cookies, you are under arrest. And I would put him in my dad's handcuffs. And it's interesting, like looking back at how different I understood law enforcement and what those handcuffs meant than I do now. My father actually was very instrumental in helping me write Dear Martin. We talked extensively about policing as a concept, American policing as a concept, because policing is very different in other countries. We talked a lot about the criminal justice system. We talked about discrepancies in, like, for instance, drug usage versus drug arrests. And there were all of these things that I got to discuss with my dad just because he was a police officer for so long. And it's been fascinating. I've had really enlightening conversations with police officers. One of my favorite conversations, I had a 911 operator approach me at an event in Texas. And she told me that she had read Dear Martin, and she had distributed, whoo, I am such a writer. She had distributed it around the call center because she was explaining to me that sometimes the way police officers are dispatched, like that starts at the 911 call center. So she was telling me about that. She was telling me about how it completely shed new light on some of the ways that calls were going out. So it's just been this really fascinating thing, seeing how the book has spoken to different people in different walks of life. But my dad loves it. I'm happy to report that. He might be a little biased, but I'll take it. What else? Yes, ma'am.
How long did you live in Israel, and what made you choose to come back?
So I was there for, sorry guys, my rock star mic is like falling off because I have too much hair. Okay, so I was in Israel for 3 years. I lived in Jerusalem. Who's been to Israel? So who's been to Jerusalem? You guys have been to Jerusalem. So you know where the shuk is, the outdoor market? I lived like 5 minutes from there. It was the coolest thing ever. Like being able to walk there was just so cool. But I was there for 3 years and I came back. Oh, this is gonna make me sound terrible, but I came back because Israel doesn't have Target. And I am not kidding. Number one, I missed Lucky Charms, the cereal. Funny story, the first time, he was my boyfriend then, but his first time in America, I took him to a Kroger. Do you guys have Kroger here? Okay, a big grocery store. So I take him to Kroger because I wanted some Lucky Charms. I had been in Israel for 3 months and I hadn't had Lucky Charms. It's a problem. So we go to Kroger and we're walking down the cereal aisle and I suddenly feel this dearth of masculine presence. And I look back and my then boyfriend is standing at the top of the aisle like this. And I'm like, are you okay? Is everything all right? And he goes, why are there so many types of cereal? Welcome to America, my dear. Welcome to America. But yeah, no, I really, Israel is where I realized just how American I really am. We love convenience in this country, and I love it too. I like my 2-day shipping on Amazon. It's wonderful. I love being able to get all of my groceries in one place, and also to go buy a new book at a different section. It's wonderful. And also the conflict and constantly being on guard, it got a little exhausting because that's just how you live over there. I don't think, especially coming from the South, we are all about the hospitality. I could turn my accent on. Y'all can hear me talk like where I came from. But we're real big on making you feel welcome when we're in the South. So you go to a place like Israel where everybody is just trying to survive. It's a very survivalist mentality there. And that got a little exhausting. So yeah, Target though was the main reason. What can I say? Yes.
Is it easier for you to write from a guy's perspective or a girl's perspective?
Ooh, I like this question. Is it easier for me to write from a guy's perspective or a girl's perspective? I'm going to answer this the exact same way I did at the high school this morning. So my husband once explained this way, so I'm stealing his words, and I'm not gonna pay him, don't tell him. But he was like, guy brains are like waffles. You have these boxes. You got like the sports box, the food box, the love box, and apparently there's also a nothing box, correct? Am I right, guys? Like there's a box where you just hop in and there's nothing going on up there. And then you have the female brain, though, is more like, it's like a bowl of spaghetti. So like you pick up one noodle, we'll pick up the school noodle. All of you with teenage children, teenage girls, pick up the school noodle and the boy noodle, the friend noodle, and the car noodle all come up with it. So you have like 8 noodles to deal with instead of this one box. I find it a lot easier to deal with the waffle than the spaghetti. Yeah, which says a lot. And I do think about that often. And I think about how, like maybe it's probably a problem that I find it easier to write boys than girls. Like maybe I need to do a better job of like trying to understand myself. What are you gonna do? But I do have sons, so I just roll with it. Yes?
So you said at the high school that you were a self-publisher, so how was that entirely for you?
So I am not self-published. I said I respect self-published people because I don't have the fortitude. So in order to self-publish, basically you write your book, you hire an editor, and then you do all of your marketing and publicity yourself. You can publish that book on a number of platforms. If you want to invest a crap ton of money, you can even get them printed. But I am a wuss, and I went with the traditional route where they do all the marketing and publicity for me. I will say though, some stuff people don't realize about the publishing industry, like the traditional publishing industry, it takes so long for a book to come out. I wrote Dear Martin in 2015. It sold in February 2015. It came out in October 2017. 32 months, friends. That's like a toddler. Like it took when I started writing Dear Martin, I had a 2-year-old. By the time it came out, I had a second kid who was a year old. It's been worth it though, it's been fun. I mean, I get to tell lies for a living. It's the best. I can lie clearly, but getting to do this for a living, getting to tell stories, especially the ones that aren't being told, it's a huge blessing as we are in this former church. Yeah. Yes.
You did such a wonderful job talking about fear and trauma, and frankly, from both the officer's perspective and the victim's perspective. How did you know that? How trauma-informed have you been? It was artful and amazing.
Oh, thank you. I do a lot of interviews when I'm working on my books. It is wildly important to me when I am writing a perspective that is not my own to actually talk to people who have lived these experiences. So I have a cousin who's a psychiatrist that I got to talk to about PTSD. I talked to my dad a lot about some of his experiences as a police officer. And then I talked to a bunch of teenage black boys about, what it's like when you get profiled. My little brother, he was 16 the first time he was profiled. He was profiled in the parking lot of a Taco Bell where he was just waiting for his friend to come out with his burrito. And police officer pulled up. He wound up in handcuffs. He still has no idea how he wound up in handcuffs. But it's just, I think it's important though. For me, books are all about empathy and getting an opportunity to step into shoes that aren't your own. Getting to see things from a perspective that might be different from the one that you have. And that's the point of them, I think, right? So my job and my goal is always to make sure I am representing these characters in the best way that I can. But I appreciate that compliment. Thank you. Yes.
How did the process of writing this book change or influence the way you intend to bring up your children?
Woo. That was a question. How did the process of writing this book change or influence the way I intend to bring up my children? That is an excellent question. Honestly, the crux of the book, I'm not being Freddie Mercury with all of this extra noise. I'm sorry, friends. The crux of the book is on page 152. It's the first line on the page. And basically what that line is, no matter what you deal with in the world, you got to decide what kind of person you're going to be. And that coming to the fore when I was writing the book is how, it made me realize, oh, this is the point of parenthood. The goal and the purpose of parenthood for me is to make sure that my children recognize that, it doesn't matter what anybody says about you. It doesn't matter how anybody feels about you. At the end of the day, you got to make the choices that are going to make you a successful person. So that's really the main thing that I got out of writing the book. I'm working on the sequel now. Writing Dear Martin, I did the first draft in 8 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that. They were the worst time of my life. I think I didn't shower very often. It was terrible. And I spent most of that time either sobbing or in a rage, because the stuff that winds up in that book, first of all, I will say that it was double that length at one point. It was double that length. It had 8 points of view. It was non-linear, so it bounced around in time, and Justice actually died on page 3 in that first version. And my editor, I will never forget the day I got the phone call where she was like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" She was like, "You can't take out the main character on page 3. And I was like, "Well, why not? I'm being new and innovative and edgy." And she was like, "You better edge yourself on to rewriting this book." So I ended up rewriting it, but dealing with all of that research and information. Oh. So now I'm doing it again because clearly I'm a masochist, I guess. But this new book is called Dear Justice, and this one is from the perspective of Quan from Dear Martin. So at the close of Dear Martin, Quan is a young man who is 16 and is in jail awaiting trial on murder charges. So where Justice is the good black kid who does everything right, he's the Carlton of the world. Quan is the kid that people assume black boys are. He's a part of a gang. He's gotten into a lot of trouble. He is in jail awaiting trial on murder charges. But it's important, I think, that we also hear his story, because as much as I can appreciate being the good black kid, because that was me, it was my life. I was that black kid that Justice was, who was quiet in the classroom when there were unfortunate things going on and unfortunate comments being made. Because, my homegirl said, there's no way I could have gotten a higher score than her. I just I didn't say anything. I wish I could have. It's fine, she's following me on Instagram now. But yes, Dear Justice is about Quan and about Quan's journey, because I think it's important that we also recognize that while, yes, there are black boys who decide they're going to do everything right, there are also black boys who don't do everything right, but there's always a reason. I'm not having fun writing that book, friends. I'm really not. You got a question back there?
Yes, I do.
Hi.
So, Mel is this young black
Mm-hmm.
and I was wondering, could it have worked if you could have switched Mel
Yeah.
as gay? How would that work?
Ooh. So I could have, absolutely. So Mello is Justice's ex-girlfriend. I have 2 regrets when it comes to this book. The first one is that when I did my revision, Justice originally had a little sister named Liberty. And Liberty was this fiery black girl who didn't take no mess from nobody, right? She was me, right? But when we did the revision, I ended up taking her out, and I didn't even notice. So basically, I wrote myself out of the book without realizing it. My other regret, and that says a lot actually about like what I expect to see in books and what I expect to find in literature. Clearly I wasn't expecting to see me because I wrote me out. The other regret I have is that I took too much of Mellow out. Mellow originally had a lot more texture, but I was deliberate about the fact that justice winds up with SJ. And that had to do with the fact that I was writing a book about racism. And I thought that it was important. I mean, it's also because, you know, I have a Jewish husband. Like, shout out to my homie Nigel, my baby daddy, love of my life. So SJ was both a shout out to my husband, to the Jewish contingent of the civil rights movement, because, you know, when you look at pictures taken during the civil rights movement and you see white faces in some of these photos, most of those faces belong to Jewish people. And I felt that that was an important thing to memorialize in this book. But also, being frank, my goal with this book was to piss off as many people as possible. Because that's the thing about racism and race relations. It can get real easy to get one-sided about it, you know? But the thing about racism is that it affects all of us in a way where it can engender hatred in all of us. And I think that it was really important to me to make sure that I had some stuff in there that would make us check ourselves too. My mother is Justice's mother. She would have lost every bit of her mind if my brother had brought home a white girl. And that has to do with American history. That has to do with, you know, even 30 years ago, 40 years ago, if you were a black man and you were seen fraternizing with a white woman in any way, it could cause you a whole lot of trouble. How many of y'all have read the book Just Mercy? There's a book called Just Mercy by a man named Brian Stevenson.
Oh,
Yeah. And in that book, there's kind of this overarching narrative arc where you have this black man who has been put on death row for a crime that he not only didn't commit, but like wasn't even around for. And a lot of this town's hatred toward this man had to do with his interactions with a white woman. And it's like these black mothers who would rather their sons not interact romantically with white girls. That has to do with history, you know? So I wanted to make sure I had that in there. And I also wanted to make sure that like this boy who's trying to confront racism in the world around him is also confronting the way that he feels about people who are different from him. So yeah, I could have switched Mellow and SJ. And I'm glad I didn't though. Because I think that, and you guys will see more of Justice and SJ in the next book. I've been trying to decide whether or not I'm gonna like put them through some stuff just to spice things up. But yeah, I think if we are going to move into a world where things are more equitable and where people are permitted to love who they want to, there are some biases we are all gonna have to examine. It's like real heavy in here. Somebody ask something light. Yes?
How do you write? I mean, do you get up and say from 8 to noon I'm gonna write and then go for lunch and
Yes.
how
I like this question. So the question was, how do I write? Like, what's my writing day look like? So I typically write in a Starbucks in Atlanta, Georgia. I have written 4 books inside this one Starbucks, and I'm at a point now where I will pretty much always write there because when I walk in, they like move out of my seat. So I'll walk in, and people will see me coming, and they'll like move their stuff, and like, there's a guy named Vince who will like, he's totally just being Vince and like being a jerk, but he'll be like, we kept the seat warm for you. I'm like, thanks, Vince. And then the barista will hand me my drink, and I feel very important, so why not right there? But I get there typically between 7:30 and 8, and I will leave there most days around 3 o'clock. I try not to break for lunch, because when I do break for lunch, I wind up there's this really great breakfast place in the same plaza, and then I'll have like 2 Bellinis, and you really shouldn't get tipsy on your lunch break. Like, that's just not a good work strategy. So most days I do not take a lunch because I have a little too much fun at lunch, and then I get done and I don't want to write anymore. So yeah, so I typically write from like 7:30 to 3-ish. I drink way too much coffee. And then, depending on whether or not I have a deadline, I will go home and either write some more or read. It's a pretty good life. I mean, after like washing the bottoms of the children and making sure that they are relatively clean when they get into bed. Little boys are so gross. Like, I love them so much, but man, there's like urine everywhere. I'm like, control that thing, will you? Yes.
Okay, so how did writing this book like change you? Like from the like how you get recognized on the street, just kind of like your day-to-day thoughts.
So I don't get recognized on the street, thank God. Can you imagine? That would be terrible. I've gotten recognized in the airport, but only because the person follows my hairstylist on Instagram. And like my hairstylist posted a picture of my highlights. And she has like 35,000 Instagram followers. So there's this person who's like, oh, I know you from Rachel Red's page. And I'm like, oh, I'm not famous for writing books, I'm famous for my hair. Fantastic. And then I did have one instance where I was working in a Starbucks that's different from my regular one. And I get on Twitter later, and there's this tweet where somebody's like, I think Nick Stone is in my Starbucks. That was weird. Can you imagine? Like, you're in a Starbucks and there's somebody watching you, and you have no idea until you get on social media later. Oh, I don't know how people deal with like the paparazzi. Ugh. But in general, this book in particular has definitely made me more compassionate. I care, and I've cared a lot about people before, but now I like really care, and I really want people to have spaces where they feel heard, where they feel welcome. I feel like that's really important. And every time I get a message from a kid, from a reader, it reminds me of that, and it reminds me of how important it is that people have places where they feel welcome, where they feel heard, where they feel seen. It's also like made my bank account look a lot nicer. Won't lie about that. I kind of like that part too. But yeah, I had this kid come up to me in Baltimore. I was in Baltimore for the Baltimore Book Festival, and I had this kid come up to me, and he said, yo, miss, I don't even read books, but I got in trouble last night because I ain't come to dinner because I was reading your book. And I was like, can I please hug you? You just made my entire life. So things like that, like I see that, you know, and it means a lot to me, and it makes me want to do the best work that I possibly can. Yes.
How would you ever feel, how would you feel if like one of your movies or one of your books was able to become like a movie?
Oh. Hi. So, it won't, Dear Martin will not be a movie. But you can see I'm still smiling. Because movies are not the only way to turn books into something you can watch. And it's really, I'm trying to like say stuff without saying it. Like, you guys are super smart. You're gonna pick up on, you're gonna use deductive reasoning here. So I might be in the process of telling Dear Martin again in a different way. Dun, dun, dun. And I will also say, you can turn a book into something you can watch in 90 minutes, or you can turn a book into something you watch in 10 hours. Episodically. So we'll see what happens. Yes.
So I just want to tell you that Target actually came from Minnesota first, so you're welcome.
Thank you. You know what? The highlight of my career so far has been buying my books at Target. I love Target. Like, I cannot tell you the last time I went in Target and spent less than $150. Like, you go in there for one thing, just one, and you come out with Harry Potter pillows and unicorn lamps and new Hot Wheels cars for your children and a new pot, even though you don't cook. It's just so wonderland, that Target. So thank you for Target. Yes.
Do you ever like take any days to just like refresh your mind?
Do I ever do what?
Like take any like break days to refresh your mind?
You know, I should. I did a self-care Sunday this week, friends. I'm proud of myself for that. Where I basically sat with like a mask in my hair all day, and I like took a bath with a balm, one of the bath bombs that is like Alka-Seltzer for your tub. And I like put a mask on my face and I was glowing. And then I got to the end of the day and felt terrible because I hadn't written anything. So I don't know, I'm still learning how to do that like brain break. I find though that it helps me, like I'll knock a book, like I'll take 6 weeks, knock out a draft, and then take like 2 or 3 days before I start the next thing that's due, because there's always something else due. Welcome to publishing, my friends. Yes.
So you've written for anthologies before, but it seems like recently in YA literature, co-writing with other authors has become a lot more popular. So is that something you've considered? And if so, is there like a dream author? Like I know at the high school you spoke about Jason Reynolds, how you really admire him. So is that someone because he's co-written with people before?
I could not write a book with Jason Reynolds. We would kill each other. He's like my older brother, so like that wouldn't work. He's the best. Like he doesn't even know it yet, but my debut middle grade novel is dedicated to him because he has like given me this bar that I will never reach because he keeps raising the dang thing, but it gives me something to strive for. I would love to write a book with Auntie Thomas though. That'd be real fun. I don't know that we'd ever get it done though, because we get together and it's like pure shenanigans. We did an event together in Atlanta, and like at one point she was rapping and I was like dancing around the stage. Like but yeah, she's one I would love to write a book with. We'll see if it happens, maybe eventually. Yes.
Me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so kind of going back to the TV thing. So if it like.
What TV thing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Episodic thing.
The episodic thing.
Might not be happening. So if it does happen, who knows? Would you be like involved in casting? Because I know recently there's kind of been some talk about like how when they do cast movies and it's about like there's like a main character is a black person and it's always like a light skinned. It's never like a, So like would you be really encouraging to like, would you really want to be involved in casting in like a whole situation?
So I mean, honestly, all of that depends on the contract. A lot of the time they try to keep the author from having that kind of control because authors can be notoriously awful. We can be pretty terrible. I'm not, but a lot of us can be. I would definitely push for certain things. For instance, Doc in Dear Martin is based entirely on the person of Jesse Williams from Grey's Anatomy. This is a beautiful man. He is a beautiful man. And he also just has this like activist spirit that I was like, you would have made a great teacher, sir. So I decided to make him one, So things like that where I have someone in mind, I would definitely like nudge a little bit like, yo, why don't you get this actor for this role or this actress for this role? We'll see what happens though, because I have no idea what we're actually talking about.
Yes, sir. You reference your mother in the book. And I can see, your dad's a cop, and I can see your outgoing personality definitely came from that side. What does your mother rock?
What's interesting is my mom is actually the reason that I am this loudmouth, obnoxious person. My dad, now my parents were never married. They broke up. They were like boyfriend and girlfriend, and they broke up when I was like 2 years old. Thank God, because that would have been a disaster. Knowing both of my parents, I'm totally happy with the fact that they were not together at any point that I can actually remember. My dad is this like hyper encourager. He's always been this guy that's like, you know, this is exactly how I said, you know, I think you're gonna do real big things one day. And I'm like, thanks, Dad, you're so nice. And now that I'm like accomplishing, you know, starting to live the dream, he's like, you know, I knew you were gonna do big things one day. And he's so sweet. But my mom is the one who tried to like kick me out of the nest with both feet. And she pushed me super hard growing up. So she was like Justice's mother. You know, Justice's mother, failure was not an option for Justice. Like he had no, like you're not gonna come back here if you fail. So you might wanna go ahead and make sure you succeed and you do the right thing. And I'm thankful for that. Like when I was a kid, I hated it. She was that mom who was like, why is this test a 96 instead of a 98? And I'd be like, Ma, it's a 96. I missed one question. And we'd get into this huge blow-up argument about why my test scores weren't perfect. But I get it now, you know? While it may not have been like the best tactic, I understand what she was trying to do. And I understand that all of that came from her belief in me. And she put this kind of ambition inside of me and this desire to really go hard and to put my absolute best out into the world. So that Mildred, my mom's name is Mildred Sue. She's wonderful. Thanks for that. Yes?
Can I speak to writing fiction versus nonfiction and what you can do with fiction?
Ew, who wants to write nonfiction? You don't get to make stuff up in nonfiction. So what I love about writing fiction is that I can include nonfiction, but you can't include fiction in nonfiction. So I like being able to I'm like, ooh, fiction, I can put some facts in here and it's fine, but I can't put fiction in nonfiction. And I don't like the restriction there. I will eventually, I think, maybe, try to do some nonfiction. I just don't know what I would write about. And because I'm such a compulsive liar, I don't know that I'd actually be able to pull it off. I'd be like James Frey, fabricating my entire memoir. It's fine. Yes?
How does the current political climate shape how you write?
You guys want to hear something wild? I love the current political climate. I love how chaotic it is, because you're seeing both the best of people and the worst of people. And honestly, that's what makes life interesting, you know? I love the discomfort of the current political climate, because it's just fun watching people squirm. I mean, it's part of the reason I write books. I like making people squirm, what can I say? But I do love that we are getting to see what really gets people going, what gets people moving. And my favorite thing that I'm getting, what I really get to take out of it, though, is seeing the things that people are thinking about, the things that people want to know more about, or the things that people don't really want to know more about. A lot of the times I take that, and that's what I decide to write about. It's the stuff that people are closed-minded about. That's the stuff that I want to write about. And it drives, though we are in a very divisive time in this country, it's definitely driving a desire for information. Sometimes that information is not true, but I can appreciate the fact that people want knowledge. Knowledge is power. Do you guys remember that song? Knowledge is power. I know what. No, you don't. All right. Yeah. You guys want to hear something cool? My editor edited The Magic School Bus. As a matter of fact, Phoebe from The Magic School Bus is named for my editor. I love it. Anything else? Yes.
Okay, so in Dear Martin, in the in-class discussions, Even though some of them were fueled by Jared's racial comments, I would love to experience more like open conversations like that.
Mm-hmm.
And had you had those types of conversations at your high school, do you think that would have changed how you live? And would you have even considered writing Dear Martin?
So interestingly enough, I did have those conversations at my high school. Not as intensely or as overtly, because I came, my high school matriculation happened during what I call the age of colorblindness, where everybody was encouraged to be colorblind, which I don't encourage. Like, please see each other's color, because when we see each other's color, we recognize that we each have different experiences, and that's a really important thing if we are going to treat each other with respect. But my teacher, had a teacher, 10th and 11th grade, my English teacher's name was Casey Weeks, and Dear Martin is dedicated to him because he was a teacher that encouraged that kind of dialogue in the classroom. I think that if I had had more of those conversations open, like where they were like openly discussing their perspectives, even when those perspectives weren't favorable or weren't popular, I think that that would have, honestly, I wish we were able to do that more. We had a discussion in one of the classes earlier about freedom of speech. And I have encountered a number of teenagers who, not just teenagers, grown people too. I have a personal Jared. My personal Jared's name is Dan, and he gets cussed out all the time. But we've been friends since we were 12. You know, you don't just cut somebody off because they have a different perspective than you. So he and I, we have these very in-depth conversations, and he is very bothered by the idea that he's not allowed to be offensive. And I'm like, oh, you're allowed to. You have your freedom of speech. If you want to run through the middle of downtown Atlanta shouting the N-word over and over again, by all means, just nobody's gonna like you. And that's the thing that I think those kind of conversations really bring to the fore. I'm not telling anybody what they can and can't say. Say whatever you want to say. What is happening? There's something going on at the corner of 4th Street, friends. Freedom of speech is happening right here on this stage. But yeah, so we have, I feel like, you know, people have and are very much entitled to their belief systems and to their ideas and to their opinions. And I do totally fine if you want to voice that opinion. If you find yourself in a position where you have voiced an opinion and other people don't like it, okay, you know? I think that those kind of conversations open the door when people are willing to be wrong or willing to reconsider their position. They open the door for some really amazing kind of collaborative movement towards a brighter future, as corny as it probably sounds. But I do wish they happened more often in high schools now. I just know that they don't, largely because of parents. Like, I love us, I'm a parent, but I also be tripping. Like, I'm not even gonna act like I don't, you know? Like, there are things that I want to protect my children from. But I will say that in writing the books that I do, it does make me question whether or not I'm doing the right thing in trying to protect them from certain things. So I just went all around the world trying to answer that question. Did I get close? Okay, good. Yes, ma'am. You gotta stand up, I can't hear you. Stand up for me. You know what? This thing is wireless.
She wants to know if you grew up with pets or have ever had a pet.
I have children, which might as well be pets, except they talk back. I did grow up with a dog named Paws, and I had a turtle, well, tortoise, he's a tortoise. He's literally like 160 years old. His name is Jordan, and he will bite your toes. So don't walk barefoot around my mother's house, because he is the king of the castle. And he just roams around, and you'll look up and scream because suddenly there's a turtle in the middle of the living room. Who will try to bite your toes? Yeah. I'm deathly allergic to cats. My best friend growing up had a cat named Tassie who knew I was allergic. Cats are evil, I'm fully convinced. She knew I was allergic to her because every time I'd come around, it'd be like, no, Tassie, she can't pet you, she'll get sick. There was one night, I was at my friend's house, and I woke up because I couldn't breathe. I literally, out of my sleep, and Tassie was sitting on my head. Haven't trusted a feline since. One more question? Yes.
Are you a fan of Cardi B?
Oh, do you see my shirt? So Cardi B is my Patronus. I literally have a sweatshirt that says Cardi B is my Patronus. Anybody familiar with Harry Potter will know what that means. She saves me from the soul-sucking creatures in the world who want to take my soul out of my body and take all the happiness out of my life. Cardi B saves me from them. But yeah, I think she's awesome. So I wrote to this is fascinating to me. Like this is one of those things where this thing happened and I was like, what has my life become? So I emailed my agent yesterday, the day before yesterday, I emailed my agent and I'm like, I would really love to ghostwrite for Cardi B. And she writes me, and we're just buddies, me and my agent. I'm like, oh, I love Cardi B. Let me tell her about my love for Cardi B. She writes me back and she's like, oh, we just sold a book for Cardi B. I don't know if you really want to ghostwrite for her. Are you serious? And I was like, what? And I told her, I was like, yeah, well, I mean, if she wants to do a young reader's edition, because I am not writing an adult book with Cardi B. No, sirree. The stuff you would have to put in that book, no thanks. I am a mother. But I was like, if she wants to do a young reader's edition, Cardi B is a rapper, by the way, for those of you who were like, who is Cardi B? She is probably the most popular rapper on earth right now. So I was like, if she wants to do a young reader's edition, let me know. And I get another email that's like, I just told her agent. What? So Cardi B's agent knows I want to write a book for her. You all are very much welcome for that information. Thanks for having me, for making me feel welcome.